Ahead and call the meeting to order. I said I've never used a gavel before, and I've seen it be broken maybe sometime in the past, so I was a little bit cautious of that. Yeah, and I know we're going to be joined by Regent Verhalen, who's running just a few minutes late, but welcome to the Special Committee on Academic Health of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. We are happy to have our first special committee meeting today. And I will say that oversight of the academic health enterprise of this university and its partnerships is one that means so much to the state of Minnesota and all the people here and beyond. And it's a charge of pivotal importance to everybody, and we are honored to shepherd this forward. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us in the West Committee Room via Zoom. While today's meeting is not being live streamed, the recording will be uploaded and archived to the board's YouTube channel after today's meeting. Please note that the West Committee Room has room-wide microphones. These microphones allow any speaker to be heard both in the room, in the Zoom meeting, and on the recording. The audio feed will pick up all audio from the room, including side conversations you might have. Given that, please try to limit any side conversations, which includes those of us around the table and members of the community who are here with us today in the audience. Additionally, regents and presenters, given that we will not use the room's touch-to-speak microphones that are in front of you, please project when you speak, so your remarks are clear on the official record. With that, we're going to go ahead and move to our first agenda item. We want to review the special committee charge and priorities for the year. I see Chair Mayron on the Zoom call. Welcome in. And as a quick refresher, I'll read the charge from Chair Mayron. The Special Committee on Academic Health will oversee the university's academic medical enterprise and its clinical partnerships. The Special Committee will build the board's understanding and capacity in this area and make recommendations to the board related to the Impact Healthcare Innovation Proposal and clinical partnership agreements. The committee will advise the administration on academic medical strategy and help propel health sciences towards clinical partnership plan that will champion medical education, research, and improve clinical care in order to more fully serve the people of Minnesota. Before I turn it over to Vice President Toller, I'd like to outline our plan. Today, we will discuss our ideas and priorities for the year. Input from today's discussion will be gathered and incorporated into a committee work plan, which will return to the committee in October. With that, Vice President Toller, welcome, and would you like to share your thoughts as well?
Thank you, Chair Wheeler, Vice Chair Johnson, Mr. President, and everybody. It is truly a delight to be here, and thank you all for agreeing to be a part of this incredibly important committee. I think this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to actually have a say into the delivery of the healthcare in the state, on behalf of the state of the University of Minnesota. And I'm grateful for your interest, for your service, and for your support in what we are going to do. This is a time of so I would say imperative and opportunity. I would like to reframe this as a challenge that is always an opportunity, the window where we can walk through. And we will look to you for guidance in navigating the complex healthcare environment in the state and the nation. We will look for realizing some of these incredible opportunities on behalf of the university. And we are going to serve this committee in any possible way in which we can advance the priorities, advance the work plan, and gather information that can serve this committee to do its utmost. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vice President Toller. All right. With that, why don't we go ahead? I think we'll just go ahead and move to our first agenda item here, second after the charge that I just read. We want to have an overview briefly of the university's health sciences. We're going to have a brief discussion presented by Vice President Toller. It's going to give us a quick high-level overview of the university's health sciences. As part of the work this year, we're going to hold a special meeting actually later this fall. These schools do such incredible work and are so vast, and actually they collaborate between each other. So we're going to organize a special session where all schools will be represented and as their interprofessional work is represented as well. So Vice President Toller, would you like to provide us with a quick level set, knowing that we're going to have a deeper opportunity to dive into this later this fall?
Of course. Thank you, Regent Wheeler and Johnson, President, members of the committee. I'm honored to be joined here today by Deans Delaney and Dean Mays. I hope I have not forgotten anybody else, because this is a collective pursuit. You know, one of the greatest advantages of this university is to have the 6 health science schools to be able to be relevant and combine the assets and engage with the community in a way that we can find creative solutions to the vexing problems of healthcare. I've been tasked with giving the brief overview and get a sense of the breadth of that collective impact. And while each of the deans will do, I'm sure, much better job highlighting the accomplishment and both sides of each of the college, for the sake of brevity and the level setting, I has been providing the brief overview. So with all the focus on academic health as a legislature, the media, and our community, it is much more important than ever to level set and to set the stage for the understanding of our clinical impact of the state of Minnesota, the university, and the people who live in the state. That is what academic health is. Academic health, I understand, is a high-quality clinical care that's informed by the sciences, plural, and builds the next generation of learners. One thing that's unique about our university, again, is that all the 6 schools are like a fanfare. This is where it's still going. Is to take all these strong 6 schools, all mission aligned, and commit them to the interdisciplinary and interprofessional work and the team science and team care and the learner experience. We are, as I said, I've asked all the deans to be present in a way that they presented 2 slides each to highlight the impact with some focus on the clinical activity, and they are in your deck in alphabetical order. So let's start with the School of Dentistry. Dean Mays is in the audience and is the only one in the region. And you can see from the first slide that the service across the state is significant. The school, like all of us, has a clear focus on access. 73% of practicing dentists in Minnesota are our graduates, and we offer several degree programs, and the faculty is extremely busy with more than 90,000 patient visits a year. You've heard me talk about the medical school in the past and the clinical practice of the school called M Physicians, the University of Minnesota Physicians, and our primary partner, of course, is Craigview, but we partner with any and all around the state in the healthcare systems, independent hospitals and clinics. We are proud of the recent improvements in our ranking, the Blue Ridge, which is the NIH funding, USU's for the hospital, and we continue to have the vast majority of the top docs in the state of Minnesota. We train 70% of physicians in the state currently on 2 campuses, and with your benevolence and support, hopefully 3 if we earn your approval in October. We enroll Minnesotans. Many of our students match in Minnesota and match in primary care. Our School of Nursing, thank you, Dean Delaney, for being here, has 2 campuses in Twin Cities and Rochester. The school is a leader in the DNP and PhD training, has several firsts, such as the training in informatics, health leadership, and innovation. You can see our school's statewide commitment on this slide is the 2nd largest University of Minnesota unit for engagement. And this slide shows the school's commitment to partnership. We all know how essential partnership is in training and advancement of academic mission. Our College of Pharmacy, led by Dean Linda Wellich, has recently, under her leadership, acquired occupational therapy and medical lab sciences. And you can see again on this slide the statewide impact of the faculty, staff, and students. The College of Pharmacy is a strong research school and operates on 3 campuses. It's nationally ranked in U.S. News and World Review. Our School of Public Health led by interim Dean Tim Beebe, as it says here, is a critical component of health and healthcare. And we all know that the focus on prevention and wellness on social determinants is where we can make the tremendous difference in outcomes and must be part of any conversation we have about healthcare. You can see on this slide the commitment to Minnesotans, the research strengths, the commitment to the community, and partnerships of the School of Public Health. Last, but only because it's the B, the College of Veterinary Medicine, led by Dean Mulgar. The college is one of the largest programs in the country, is highly ranked, research intensive, has a significant presence, and of course we know all where we want to take pets in the science of data. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Toller. And I think, and you've said this before, but can you reiterate to us how many schools in the United States have 6 schools like this?
There are 4. Madam Chair, there are 4 universities in the United States that have all 6. And we are, with all humility, we are probably the best ranked.
Great. I mean, it's incredible, and it's incredible the impact that these schools have had on the state of Minnesota and the livelihood of many of us, including me, I would say, as a triple gopher and a graduate of the medical school. So with that, is there any discussion, any questions about the scope of schools here, knowing that later this fall we'll have a time to go much deeper in depth to what these schools mean and what they mean to all of us. But any questions or comments that people want to raise? Okay, well, we'll have much more time, but I think our ability to shepherd these in the appropriate way so they continue to make the impact for all who live in this state and beyond is going to be very important. So thank you, Vice President Toller. Anything else you want to add before we turn?
Madam Chair, I am incredibly proud to be able to serve schools, not just the one, but all of them in this capacity. And again, I'll provide any information and any input that is needed for the community.
Great. And we will, and I haven't talked to Chair Mayron yet, but we will, when we have that special session, certainly this committee will be involved in that, but we'll open it to the entire Board of Regents and other interested participants, obviously, as well. So thank you.
Madam Chair, one more thing I wanted to say is that you will hear the full breadth of the all health science schools presented by their teams in the special session in November. So this will be an opportunity to dig deeper and wider into the impact.
Yeah, that's great and needed. So thank you very much. Yeah. So with that, we'll turn to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the Governor's Task Force to ensure nation-leading healthcare and professional education continues here. And Vice President Toller again and Senior Vice President Franz will provide us with an update on the Governor's Task Force that is meant to ensure nation-leading health professional education. And I will say that we're going to follow this with a discussion because this task force has yet to have been named. And we are, as you will hear, we have 2 representatives that will be named representing the University of Minnesota among a broader state group that will be looking at this charge. So this is a chance for us to have a discussion of what do we hope gets attended to in that task force, in that meeting. So I'll welcome discussion after we hear from Vice President Toller and Senior Vice President Franz.
Thank you, Chair Wheeler, Regent Johnson, Mr. President, Regents, and everybody in the audience. Our next item on the agenda, of course, is the Governor's Task Force, as Chair Wheeler described. We start from the notion never to forget who we serve. We serve the people in the state in their time of need, wellness sometimes they're suffering. And as you have so correctly said in the past, the role of the university is nested in a larger regional story of the healthcare delivery and how we preserve the well-being and health of the people who live in the state. We believe this is a good step forward in the conversation we are having with stakeholders about the future of academic health of the state, and my colleague, Senior Vice President Franz, will say more about that. First, to frame this for everyone, I want to give some background what led to this executive order. First one. We truly started at the beginning. We go back to 1997. This is when I was still a graduate student at this university. And at that time, I had nothing to do with it, of course. But the university transferred ownership of the hospital to Fairview. So the Children's Hospital was within East Bank Hospital at the time, and I'll get to the buildings in a minute. So we entered in a 30-year affiliation with that, and that one is set to expire in 2026. At the same time, the university with regional policy has established a faculty practice plan. We call it University of Minnesota Physicians and Physicians, and this serves that the faculty that is dedicated to the shared clinical goals of the affiliation agreement, and at the same time serves the public mission of the university. So if you ask any of our faculty or doctors, they would first say they are a university, and then they go to their primary care or specialty affiliations that they have. There were big and small adjustments, as is obvious, in this agreement, but the most important was about 5 years ago when we were able to, in 2018, as the University of Minnesota Physicians and Fairview Healthcare entered into a new agreement that was designed as a true academic system. The academic work is the operative business end of that sentence. What it means is that we have built a system that can strengthen the delivery of clinical care by integrating the science and innovation and the learner experience into the clinical care. And we have done this because it improves the outcomes of patients that we serve and the families and the communities. And with this high quality, innovative care, we were able to infuse academic missions in a very large care system. And this increased trials, clinical trials. I'm an oncologist, and I can tell you that the outcomes of a patient who is of any age on clinical trial is much, much better than if you are treated by so-called standard of care. And we were able to increase our ambulatory perimeter, the access to care, not just around the big cities and big hospitals, but through the state. And we have also been able to contribute significantly to the workforce. We will talk later about how important that is in the rural areas, because the learners, there is no better tool for retention and recruitment than if you treat the learners well. Although teams, in the health sciences don't very well. So this has been part of the whole concept and the foundation, the system that we designed so that it delivers the goals that we have aimed for, has been done in a way that the university faculty has a decision-making authority through the system. Not unilateral, this was true envisioned and implemented as a full partnership, recognizing that the strength that we bring together are more than the individual parts. Now, the university clinical leadership of the specialty care delivery, the commitment to the academic mission has been then externally affirmed by what we have been able, with your permission, to brand the system as Health Fairview. So the brand is not the words, of course. The brand is the clinical work that goes on in these clinics and in the operating in the intensive care units, and whole quality of outcomes and the access and the affordability is all part of that equation. Now, over the last 5 years, we have accomplished a tremendous amount of good things. We have seen the University of Minnesota medical system, the central hospital, gone from being ranked for the quality and safety at the very embarrassing lower portion of the spread of the academic medical centers and hospitals and the healthcare system in the United States, to the top third and perhaps to the top decile in the current year of 2023. We are at the same time have seen millions of patients and provided care that collectively resulted in a good business outcome. We had over $100 million turnaround in quarter 2 of 2020 and quarter 2020 to 2023. This is again along the time that we have been able to increase the quality metrics, the likelihood to recommend, and all the observed and expected mortality readings that are so paramount to delivering the care. And the 2018 agreement has gone through these different versions of it, if you will, in the way we have executed on it. And it has been drafted by this university in a way and the Fairview Health leadership so that it expires at the same time as the 30-year agreement that started in 1997. And that's nested, in that larger agreement by design. So it will expire in 2026 unless extended by mutual agreement. I would say that both organizations, or all three organizations, have learned a great deal from this experience. This is beautiful opportunity how the patient-centered care can be delivered across the journey of a patient, what we call service lines. So she does not visit individual departments, but really the departments of the clinical teams travel with her through the different stages of her diagnosis, interventions, and recovery. So on that part, we have learned from each other as we should, and I think we got better in the process as partners. All of that, however, started to get more attention with the announcement that the Fairview intended to merge with Sanford Health. Everybody knows about this, but the most tangible issue for us was that, and it is currently, that the East Bank, West Bank Hospital, and Sonic Children's facilities on the university campus are owned by Fairview. The clinical surgical center that is a hub for our clinical appointments on this campus is owned by the university. But the challenge was that through these discussions between Sanford and Fairview, it was a possibility that the majority of our clinical practice of the university clinical practice, the majority of the university training and the clinical trial research would be owned by a self-employed company. And that was concerning to me, not just within the university, but outside the community, the public as well. And it, at the legislative level, led to the House File 402, which SVP Fans will say more about, and it's been supported by legal language to the fact that these are public assets that they should serve Minnesota. Now, while Fairview's proposed merger with Sanford is no longer under consideration, the financial performance has been. This has been a challenge for the teams, and while improving slightly, and in slightly but significantly, the trajectory is getting better because of the hard work of our combined clinical teams. This still has created a significant concern about the path forward, and especially the sustainability of the partnership and the governance of Minnesota's only public academic medical system in the mission to serve all Minnesotans. So I will turn now to Senior Vice President of Finance and Operation, Myron France, to talk more about the legislative session and where we are now.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dean Tolar. And as Dean Tolar mentioned, this last year there were many discussions, and these discussions took place around the state and in the legislature about this proposed merger. But also we also discovered that other issues about healthcare challenges were brought up too, which are always here and always present. So it's provided an opportunity for a very robust discussion of the delivery of healthcare generally to the people of Minnesota and specifically through the University of Minnesota. First of all, I want to thank and recognize from the legislature and Governor Walz that the university's academic health system is an asset of the entire state, which they recognized through the passage and signing of House File 402 last session. That bill ensures that any partnerships with the university are in the best interest of Minnesotans, and that is 100% consistent with our mission at the University of Minnesota. This last year at the university, we have steadfastly focused on our public mission and these discussions. We were very grateful when Governor Walz issued his executive order for the formation of the task force on academic health at the University of Minnesota, and the appointment of former Commissioner of Health Jan Malcolm as chair. We also thank Senate Leader Dietrich and House Speaker Hortman for their support of the task force. We have been in discussion with the Walz administration to ensure we fully understand both the charter of the task force and the extent to which the university can support and provide information to the task force. We understand that appointments to the task force will be made this month, with the first meeting potentially occurring in late September or in early October. The governor's executive order established a task force on academic health at the university, and the executive order begins by reaffirming what we already know, and I'm going to quote from the executive order. Minnesota is a national leader in delivering quality health care, providing patient-centered, community-based primary care, and ensuring health care access, equity, and affordability. Maintaining these high standards depends on Minnesota's ability to train the next generation of healthcare professionals. As Dean Toller just described, the university's health sciences programs all participate and are part of that, serving the healthcare needs of the people of Minnesota. The governor's executive order specifically focuses on the role of the University of Minnesota, especially the medical school, to advance the public mission to the state for primary care, rural care, and health equity. Specifically, the governor's executive order charges the task force with delivering by January 15, 2024, recommendations to support world-class academic health professions education, research, and care delivery by the university that will advance equity, primary care, and ensure the highest quality health care in a financially sustainable way. A very simple charge, right? The governor's executive order provides 5 areas of focus for the task force. Number 1, identify concerns for public funding of academic health, including financial and clinical partnerships with non-academic partners. Number 2, consider financial and partnership models for academic health that address the cost and benefits to health professions education in Minnesota. Number 3, examine options for governance and oversight of publicly funded health professions education at the University of Minnesota. Number 4, review and examine short, medium, and long-term funding needs to support academic health and the role of the state of Minnesota and other clinical partners to meet these funding needs. Number 5, develop goals and expectations for academic health, performance for equity, workforce diversity, geographic accessibility, and primary care and prevention that align with One Minnesota goals for Minnesota health. We also appreciate the focus on large scope and long-term healthcare industry challenges. In some cases, we all know that Minnesota alone cannot solve some of these industry problems like the federal reimbursement model. However, with the January 15 recommendation target, we can begin the process of prioritizing those challenges that we can address very soon, and with Minnesota-specific solutions, like public funding of academic medicine, as an example. As we work collaboratively on these healthcare challenges, we all have an opportunity to make a difference, and we all need to help chart new ways of solving these solutions for the people of Minnesota. And why is that? Well, it's simple, because at the University of Minnesota, we are driven to discover new ways and better ways to serve. With that, Madam Chair, we're happy to have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senior Vice President Fran. So any discussion about this, and in knowing it's not yet met, not yet been named, but want to make sure that there's any comments that are needed to what should its charge be and going forward, and what would you want to see from this going forward, and any other comments you wish to make. I will say that it speaks to the salience of this for the entire state that the governor had this executive order, and we as a university are grateful to the legislative leaders and the governor for doing so because of its importance. So, and I will say, working beside and for former Commissioner Malcolm, I think that's an excellent choice in a chair too for this endeavor. So. Any comments or questions or things that you wish to make certain that is attended to in this task force? Now's our chance to do that before it's named and formed. Yes, Regent Turner.
I have a question. So are all of, I see the representative, Mr. Blair from CentraCare, is all of the healthcare companies going to be represented in this task force?
Yeah.
And is it a concept that we want? Are we going to lead them all, or, you know what? Are we going to try to have one concise plan, kind of carry our mission of healthcare and education, et cetera, and try to instill that in the rest of the healthcare companies? And are they going to all be part of this task force?
Senior Vice President France.
Madam Chair, Regent Turner, that would be a question for the governor. So the governor makes the appointment. So there are 5 positions. Chair Malcolm is one position. Senator Dietzig will appoint one. Speaker Hortman will appoint another one. There's several commissioners, education and health commissioners, or their designees will be on the task force. That's 5. The other 10 appointments will come in those buckets that are listed in the executive order, one being the University of Minnesota, but the other ones, so that we have, I think it's over 60 applications now online in the portal. So anyone can apply to be on the task force, and there are, as I mentioned, at least 60 applications, I think more. And it'll be up to the governor to decide what is the right mix of folks, whether do you want, how many industry representatives do you want from systems, or do you want from payers? Do you want them from local communities? So we obviously will provide suggestions, as anyone would, to the governor about what the task force makeup in terms of who we think would be some good participants. But it's really up to the governor to decide what is that right mix of people, because this task force, as Chair Wheeler mentioned, is really designed to think about the state as a whole, and the special role that the University of Minnesota plays in that public mission. So I think that's a good point. The question, by law, a task force is limited to 15 people. You could make this task force 100 people, and there are plenty of people who would qualify to be on it. So I think the task for Chair Malcolm and the task force will be to make sure that whoever is selected on the task force will hear from all different segments, because that's part of what the task force, I think, will be trying to do, will be to listen to different components, different industry folks, different community folks. So our mission, I think, I would suggest to this special committee, and I really support the board's decision to have this special committee and get it engaged now, is to really help Dean Tolar and the rest of the team and President Ettinger and I and all of us put forward the best plan we can, so that this task force can react to, think about, and we obviously hope to inspire and direct where these challenges ought to go. We have ideas that we want to pursue, but so I think this special committee can be a really good way to submit ideas and support for how to influence in a public and transparent way this process. But it's very open, it's very free-flowing, and so I want to give full credit to the governor, like he's done in many different other areas, is to open this discussion up to as many people as we can. So it remains to be seen how the governor will ultimately decide the right mix of people should be for that task force. Not a very precise answer, but all I know.
Regent Turner, anything to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Senior Vice President. And I guess my question is, how does the focus of this task force on academic medicine differ from the focus of healthcare throughout the state? Because we have to keep this really focused, because we're not talking about medical and healthcare throughout the state. We're talking about the focus of academic medicine, which is really tied to the University of Minnesota, right?
Yes.
So.
Let me, Madam Chair, Regent, let me start that, but I want to flip it over.
And then just a follow-up to that is how does that change the committee membership to make sure we have people that are experts in those areas?
Well, it's a really great call out to mention that it is the task force on academic health at the University of Minnesota. So why why is that there? I mean, why is the task force there? Ultimately, clearly, the task force enumerates and lists the 6 different health sciences programs in the executive order that Dean Toller just described as part of the core about what really academic health, how broad it is. So in my understanding of the governor's executive order, he wants to make sure that and I think this is why we're so appreciative of the legislative leadership and the governors, they recognize the opportunity and the role of the University of Minnesota in this public mission. It is clearly, in our view, and I think in the governor's view and the legislature's view, we should be a leading partner in deciding how healthcare is delivered, advanced, and changes, and making sure that everybody in the state has access, equal access to the wonderful academic health outcomes that we can deliver. So the focus really is through the University of Minnesota as a leading player in this area. But I'll let Dean Toller talk a little bit more about how that interplays with community health.
Madam Chair, Regent Hicks, excellent question. I think I would start with making very clear, this is not about medicine alone. This is really about health. And the health, as we all know, and the deans in the audience and others will affirm, is a teaching. And what we are really, as I understand the charge, what we are really tasked with is to design a system that would fit the needs of Minnesotans in a sustainable way. That's not easy, because if you look at the market over the last 3 years at least, you have seen 28% increase in labor, you have seen about 18% increase in supply chain. We have lived through 7 to 9% inflation, and the Medicare changes were about 5%. So nobody has to be a mathematician to realize that there's an enormous stress on the business as it is. So why I think the executive order is framed in the way that Chair Wheeler read to the committee is in part that the state understands and realizes that academic health, which I mean by the whole person health, it is the understanding that people don't want to be sick. People don't want to have surgeries if they want to prevent them. So the academic institutions in this United States have been the originators of value-based care, of whole person health, of prevention, understanding that this is, regardless of the lucrative ends on the procedural part of it, that this is what we want. And how I understand the executive order and the merit, the substance of the task force is that exactly because these ideas emerge from academic institutions, such as this university, we have to move from being sort of authors of these ideas to being trustees of these ideas, to being effective, pragmatic champions of these ideas.
Thank you. Regent Verheelen.
Chair Wheeler, I have one question and then potentially a follow-up, if you'll allow it. Senior Vice President Franz mentioned that there were 60 applicants or so in the portal. Which portal is that? For the University of Minnesota positions, or is that broadly for all 10 of the additional positions?
Madam Chair, Regent Verheelen, yes, it's the portal for all the 10 positions, not at the university. This is strictly for the task force.
Great. And then in looking at this list of the 5 categories under the 10 additional members, beyond the 2 representing the University of Minnesota, I can think of individuals that we've interacted with as a board who have affiliations to the university who would fit into many of these categories: expertise in health disparities, expertise in delivering primary care in rural areas, those types of things, those areas, excuse me. And so are there candidates who may not be representing the University of Minnesota, but we're aware have put themselves up for some of these other membership appointment positions.
Madam Chair, Regent Verheyen, yes. In fact, it's interesting when you look through that list, those categories are pretty broad. And there are a lot of folks who applied for some of the different categories who have university affiliation or other affiliations that, I mean, you could imagine a number of different appointments that would cross all kinds of different sectors, including the University of Minnesota many times. But, you know, I mean, I think obviously the governor will have to make sure that it's blended in a way. But I could see a number of people who have university positions who really qualify for one particular area better than anybody else could be appointed.
Thank you, Regent Verheyen. Any other questions, discussion points people want to make? Yes, President Ettinger.
Chair Wheeler, I just wanted to support Senior Vice President Franz's comment about the appreciation for the timeliness of the creation of this special committee on academic health. Chair Wheeler and I had the opportunity to be on a task force of the governor on a different topic, and it is a focused, rapid process. I mean, and indeed, if they're contemplating assembling this group at the end of the month with a deadline of January 15th, it's going to be a whirlwind. And so we really appreciate the ability to have a focused, available committee as the work of the task force goes forward that we can potentially bounce things off of.
Thank you, President Ettinger. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And we've seen it work very well. And for us to have an opportunity as a university to put that plan forward and then to have the broad stakeholders make, that better and inform where we go, knowing this is such a precious resource to the entire state is really an opportunity. Before I close it out, Chair Mayron.
Thank you. And thank you for this presentation. It's been very, very helpful to have a background on this. My question is, with the timing of the task force, and as a person who has not been involved in the governor's task forces in the past or watched their work, the timing strikes me that this is perhaps designed, the work of the task force, to inform the legislature that goes into session in February. But I'm guessing that, and I'd be interested for those around this horseshoe, whether what's the significance of the January 15th deadline, and where will that, whatever the recommendations are of the task force, how will they be used and go forward within the legislature or other places?
Madam Chair and Chair Mayron, thank you. That's an excellent question. And I think it's clearly designed to deal with both, as we talked about, short-term and long-term issues. I mean, we can't possibly solve in 4 or 5 months all of the issues listed on the executive order, but we can begin that process. But there are some things we can do relatively quickly. And I think it's those issues, especially those that require legislative action. And I think that's my understanding, and that's why the January 15th date provides a really great opportunity to present those kinds of ideas or recommendations that can be acted upon in the 2024 legislative session. So the timing is perfect for dealing with short-term legislative opportunities to provide support for academic medicine, funding, and other issues as well. So I think it's perfectly timed. As President Ettinger noted, though, that's January 15th is like tomorrow in terms of a task force like this. And so they need to move quickly and decisively. That's part of the reason I think we have legislative members on that task force as well, to make sure that the legislative folks are engaged in part of this process, to be realistic about what can be achieved on the short term. Dean Toller, did you have any?
Madam Chair, Chair Mayron, I personally think this is a good thing. This is not a bad thing. This has to have a cadence that's rapid, because it forces the minds that are brilliant, whoever they're going to be, to really compartmentalize the actions in a way that will focus on what is essential. And I think the question in front of the task force is going to be what is truly essential for the work that we consider fundamental for the health of Minnesotans. So in this way, it is absolutely conceivable to me that the task force will understand the shortness of the first phase and will focus on what I would think would be repair of some of the things that are in a way of delivering a good quality healthcare. Then sort of revitalize, some of the attachments between the state and the university and the greater Minnesota. And lastly, to reform, some of these things. But now doing this in a way that is sort of metaphysical and, sort of overwhelmingly, visionary in this way, but rather in a very practical, prudent, business-like way that will enable the next phase. Because what we are tasked with is not, a concept that complicated. We want to decrease costs. We want to increase coordination of care. We want to manage patients longitudinally. And we want to synchronize the medical, behavioral, pharmaceutical, and social determinants of health for the people in Minnesota. To do that, one has first, in my opinion, protect that academic health base, which we have had the presentation earlier. And that is going to be the phase one of this task force.
Thank you. Yeah, and Interim President Ettinger said it well. He co-chaired a task force before, and that was separated into short-term and longer-term, outcomes, and actually that worked pretty well to be focused. So I imagine this task force will have the opportunity to make sure their work is focused and what they have to do in the short term, which will be very rapid fire till the January 15th date. So great. Any other questions or comments? Great. Well, thank you for the discussion. I think that this already helps inform the work of the group as well. So appreciate all that people have offered here. So now let's go on to some the next item on the agenda, which is the academic affiliation agreement with CentraCare. So I'm going to ask Ken Holman to come to the table here, and we want to review this academic affiliation agreement. It's going to return next month for action, just so people know that. But joining Vice President Toller, besides Dr. Ken Holman, who's a respected colleague that I've gotten fortunate to work with, Vice President Toller, would you like to, and I believe their Chief Financial Officer, Mike Blair, is also on Zoom. So hello, Mike. Glad to have you here with us as well. So Vice President Toller, would you like to start this off?
Yes, Madam Chair. Would it be allowable that I join my friend?
Absolutely, okay. Absolutely, and in fact, that would probably help the camera people too.
Right.
So that's good. Yeah.
It's much better looking. I'll be there by contact. Just click. Thank you, Chair Wheeler, committee members, Mr. President, the audience. We are proud to bring to you this item that I am delighted that I am joined here by my friend and colleague, Dr. Ken Holman, who is the CEO of CentraCare. We have been in front of the full board several times already, and the vision of our partnership as we are here today is an update on the progress that we have made, and also to have a first discussion with you with regards to our proposed affiliation agreement. I will give a little background, but first I am gonna attempt this.
Made important progress towards the shared vision of expanding medical education in central Minnesota with a new campus of the university's medical school in St. Cloud. Together, we made the case to our communities and the Minnesota legislature that families throughout greater Minnesota deserve access to physicians trained in and for our communities.
There's the opportunity that lies below for us to introduce medical students to central Minnesota physicians, to CentraCare. We might actually get them to stay here and work in this community. And if they don't, perhaps we will get them to think that, I never thought that I would do primary care in a small town in Minnesota, but I know that I could because I actually got my training in a small town in Minnesota.
CentraCare has an increasingly large rural footprint, and it's important that we're meeting the needs of those rural communities. One way to do that is to make sure that our trainees are going out to these communities so they understand what it's like to practice in those locations, what it's like to live in those locations.
one of the things that's been really heartwarming for me practicing in central Minnesota is how much support and respect that receive from the communities.
And rural is a little different, and that's why this project is so important. We need to make sure that we continue to have strong medical practices in small towns to keep people getting their highest quality care close to home.
In my view, when you have medical students or residents that are shoulder to shoulder with physicians or healthcare providers, that's a better environment for the patient.
There's a dynamism that is introduced when you have students and you have learners. That allows for the clinical services to be much more diverse and dynamic. It also allows for a vertical integration. What that means is it's possible for us to send folks over for specialized care when needed, if and when needed, to a system that is not a stranger anymore.
What we need is the generosity, the magnanimity, the shared understanding with the community, with the thought leaders, with the business leaders, with the patients and their families, paired with the extended ability of the University of Minnesota to catalyze that growth.
And bring that learning, that education, that expertise to you, where you live, where you play, where you worship, and where you want to be.
As you can see, this is magnanimous, this is noble, this is a pursuit of the collective intelligence around the state, and it is what I have seen even more in greater Minnesota than in the big cities is the creative resilience with which people approach challenges, and healthcare is one of them, and that's in part why we are here in front of you today, and I'll start with making sure that people understand that this has started a while ago. This is not like yesterday's thought. This was a good thought, 10 years ago, but with earnest, we really started about 2 years ago, talking about the possibility of making the residency training, making the medical student training and care delivery a little better in ways that has not been really accomplished in the past very much in that area of the state. We have always worked in small ways. We have had the family medicine residency in St. Cloud for almost 20 years now, 18 years. We have just opened the rural training track in Wilmer, and Ken will describe the details of these parts. We always had a relationship between the M physicians and Centra Care, and we always had the partnership in the clinical trial enrollment, which is really important for the access to the top quality healthcare in the state. However, what we are in front of you to present is different. It is a quantum leap different. It is different in every possible way, and all of them are good. When we looked around the country, as we always do, at our peers, at the similar affiliations for comparison, we have not found any. You see quite frequently that the training would be paired with a hospital itself or a system itself, but none in a way that Dr. Holman and his team were open to thinking boldly about, which is to have the shared goals, shared budgets, shared governance in a way to advance the training. We have obviously designed this as equal partners. We have designed it as in a similar way as I discussed before in the task force comments, in a way that the partners deliver on their assignments, if you will. So the campus would remain obviously medical school university campus. The residencies are Centra Care residencies with the University of Minnesota sponsorship. The research institute that we aim to have is going to be co-led, and everything boils down to that whole person health.
that affordability, that access, that improvement in the healthcare delivery that is unusual to accomplish in the current environment. So I'm deeply grateful to Dr. Holman for his vision, commitment, and ability to crystallize some of these ideas around very pragmatic, very prudent, very clearly executable plan. So this is the basic idea. One medical school, 3 campuses. We are building off what, with your permission and guidance, we have done in Duluth over 50 years now, which is to develop a comparable education across the medical school campuses, because it is essential to the accreditation of the federal bodies on education and medicine, and to support what we are planning to do here. We are in parallel moving in Duluth to make it a 4-year program, always thinking how we can build on success that has been stabilized, then branched, and then amplified so that it serves more people. You are obviously knowledgeable, aware. I think you, as I, are at times frustrated with the disequilibrium across the different regions in the state of Minnesota. And one of them is the access that patients in greater Minnesota have to the high quality care and the shortage of physicians in these areas. So the geographic maldistribution so shortage is one. There are shortage of nurses, there's shortage of physicians, there are shortage of pharmacists. All the healthcare professions, you can point to a shortage, but that's not the whole story. Because in addition, like an insult to injury, it's not just the numerical, the quantitative part, but it's the qualitative. The geographic maldistribution is favoring the large cities and big hospitals and disfavoring the rural areas. So the answer that we came up with is very straightforward. If you want to have physicians practice in rural areas in greater America, in greater Minnesota, you train them there. And not just that, you are gonna focus on recruiting these students and these young adults from that area. Then you train them there. And then third component of that is that you focus on rural medicine, which is different than the highly specialized, highly concentrated medicine in large hospitals. So the answer is straightforward, but we need to recruit from these areas. We need to train with this rural medicine concept in mind. But as my colleagues in the health sciences would be the first supporter of, we have to be inclusive in this interdisciplinary, interprofessional way so that we can deliver on that mission of education, research, and clinical care. And with that, I'll turn to Dr. Holman.
Thank you. Chair Wheeler, Regents, committee members, Dr. Toller. The previous slide mentioned a phrase called making rural life healthier. What does that mean? I think one of the challenges we recognize coming out of the pandemic, and I am glad that we are coming out of the pandemic, is how do we re-engage with our communities? The pandemic was destructive in many different ways, not only the loss of life, but a sense of loss of common purpose, a loss of a sense of community, and really a sense of, boy, what are we doing together? And so coming out of the pandemic, our board engaged in a strategic plan with our senior leadership group called Making Rural Life Healthier. Making is an active word. Doesn't say we're going to think about it. And it's healthier is not about clinics and hospitals. It's about all of us. So making rural life healthier is the 10-year vision for CentraCare. And the cornerstone to that is, and it has been since schools were formed some 2,000 years ago, education. It's about educating our population in all the disciplines. And for us, making rural life healthier, of course, has a focus on healthcare education, and medical school is part of that. In 1974, when I went to the University of Minnesota, there were 3 campuses. Duluth had opened in 72. The Twin Cities campus had been around for nearly 100 years. And of course, Mayo had been just started in 72. Population of Minnesota in 1974 was 3.2 million. And there were just under 300 medical students between those three campuses. Fast forward to 2023, same number of medical students on those campuses, and the population of Minnesota is well over 5 million. And so the structural problem we see related to training the numbers of physicians is manifested particularly in rural environments. And as Dr. Toller aptly stated, it affects all of our other healthcare professionals. Nurses, med tech, lab tech, pharmacists, you name it. And so as CentraCare has adopted our Making Rural Life Healthier, a cornerstone of that is education, and starting with a medical school in collaboration with the University of Minnesota. The history that we have with the University of Minnesota is long and lengthy. We have roughly over 1,000 students a year in some site in CentraCare, many of them from the University of Minnesota, but many of them also with the state college system, many of them with our private schools in our geography, St. John's, St. Ben's, St. Kate's. So the notion of creating an educational, virtual, and real healthcare environment to serve the needs of rural Minnesotans is central to making rural life healthier. Next slide, please. This is a timeline that describes our work. As Dr. Toller aptly stated, this started with kind of curbside conversations Jacob and I had over 2 years ago. And prior to that, when Brooks Jackson was the dean and Eric Kaler and Joan Gable were presidents, I had mentioned that as well as a really a cornerstone to how we rethink health in rural Minnesota. There's this notion of institutional readiness. We were ready, Jacob and the university were ready, and that's why we're here. You'll notice through the detail on this slide that 2025, the first class starts, but along the way we are actively engaged in clerkships and residencies. As Jacob said, that we are starting a family medicine residency, another one in Wilmer next year. And we will also apply for additional residency slots within CentraCare to help train the folks in primary care, OBGYN, pediatrics, mental health, psychiatry. So this indicates the timeline. We have some approval steps to go through, and that's why we're here. We thank you for your time and attention. As we go to the next slide, I want to talk about momentum. So the question is what's the community support for this? And I had always been hopeful that it would be remarkable, and has exceeded my expectations. If you go to the website, ruralhealtheducationmn.com, it is a website that we put together. It is amazing. We have over 150 companies that have signed on to this notion of improving healthcare in our rural communities. The legislature in this last session approved $15 million as some seed money. We are working with the city of St. Cloud for a bonding issue in the next biennium as well to get at this whole notion of how we create an economic vitality around making rural life healthier. And many stakeholders are engaged to advance education and economic development. And that's what I want to spend just a minute about. The rural economies are dependent on many things, but in many of our communities, healthcare is the largest employer. It's the largest sense of jobs. It's where the car dealers sell their cars. It's where the grocers sell their groceries. It's what supports our churches, United Way, Catholic Charities, Lutherans. It is the ecosystem in the hub. So healthcare is not just about clinics and hospitals. It is the ecosystem. It defines our community. And so this notion of how we can create a more vibrant future for rural America, for rural Minnesota, is central to making rural life healthier.
Thank you, Ken. The Regents, when we presented this last time, appropriately asked for metrics. So these are sort of our startup metrics. We are in the startup phase, and as you can see, we are aiming for the 24 incoming students each academic year. So starting in fall 25, we should be full, if you will, in 2028. We are simultaneously building on this, the education of the new doctors in the residencies, and we are looking forward to filling up to 55 total residents across the 5 specialties. We are working together, and Ken has been phenomenal in in the advocacy across the community in St. Cloud and elsewhere, on the philanthropic and the community support, which we will need not just for the financial aspects of it, but really to be the part of the community that we are trying to build together. And science and innovation has made anything and everything that I know about in academic health, in health in general, possible. So learning more about how to understand better the needs of the community, how to deliver the care better, is a metric and a goal in this endeavor as well. This slide shows you the process we are using to launch the campus. We have several joint work groups. We have, I think, 7 now. They have been working on a detailed planning and fitting this into the accreditation requirements that are federal requirements. And we are working in parallel to build a system that delivers a sustainable yet nimble system whereby we can adapt so that we always think about how to make things better, how to make high quality campus and learner experience, how to deliver better on the foundational stones of the partnership itself. These working groups then will report to the Executive Oversight Committee, and then to Ken, myself, and then to you, this Board of Regents and Board of CentraCare. What it is, in fact, is as if you have taken a lot of information from a very much changing environment and you put it on the same platform of joint logistics plan. So to deliver on that, we have been very particular to design a system that will be permissive for the success of this. And I'm grateful to a lot of people, including Ainsley Schauf, who is the program manager on my side, and people in the CentraCare that work equally hard to deliver all these. As you can see from these pictures, the students are part of it. So we all have been energized by our learners, I think. I have learned from my students more than they know. And we are taking that ability to get input from them and from staff on both organizations so that we can improve the way we go, about that. Dr. Holman.
The site that will be the hub will be located on our Plaza campus. We're all aware that one of the trends in healthcare, and it is a good trend, is to have more ambulatory models. So a number of years ago, CentraCare made an investment in a large ambulatory center in St. Cloud. And we are going to repurpose what we would call our administrative services buildings. It's where we used to house a lot of our IT and finance support people. As you know, COVID changed the way people work and where they work. And so we're going to repurpose. It's a quite new building. And we're going to invest about $18 million in this building to make sure that it is the best facility possible to train our medical students, as well as cross-functional training, for example, a sim center for our nurses and other healthcare professionals. We envision this then also to be, we have plenty of land here. We're going to look at housing. How do we create a remarkable sense of community within the educational aspect, not only for physicians, but for nurses and all the other programs that we have. In other words, what is the glue that holds us together in this notion of team-based care in modern healthcare? And that is the objective, not only of the medical school, but I also say this has an enormous ripple effect in all the work that we do, whether it's with our nursing training partnership with the U of M, to St. Ben's, to St. Kate's, to all the other programs that we have. This is an important part of how we create a hub for medical education that serves rural Minnesota.
I'm going to go to the draft agreement, if you will. But before I do that, I have to repeat again that this is not about medicine alone. This is about nursing. This is about a whole clinical team, about pharmacists. This is really meant to be in the same way as we discussed earlier in this committee. It should be ennobled, I would like to think, by all academic health professions we have. So the draft agreement that you see in front of you is the one that focuses on the collaborative approach, and the governance is built not only on the basis of the fact that Ken and I like each other, can I say that? But it will, survive us, and it will really be applicable in a way that, again, is the system that is designed to deliver on the outcomes that we are putting in front of you. It is key to this understanding that the organizations retain all the same authorities and responsibilities that they have now. This group will, this collective effort will center around the planning, around the alignment, about the budgets, about the philanthropic commitments, and, as I said, around the Rural Health Institute. The framework is probably the more apt way to describe what you have in front of you, and it outlines the committees of the organizations, our plans to work together. And I will repeat myself again because it's so important that it makes clear that the campus remains university campus and it's required university authority over this, and that our accreditors in the liaison for the continuing medical education can actually approve this. And our early meetings with them have been quite supportive, and that's exactly what they seek across the whole United States. It also defines the commitments to research in rural medicine. It makes clear that the budgets are shared. So the university's commitment is to apply the St. Cloud tuition and other earned revenue to this St. Cloud campus. And the CentraCare commitment is to fund reasonable expenses over that amount. There are several supporting agreements that will follow, including finance agreement, branding agreement, and the research cooperation. And we have written this now with help, of course, of our legal teams over the initial terms of 10 years with renewals. And we also added provisions that the campus or the residencies remain with different terms should the partnership, for one reason or another, be dissolved. I will turn back to my partner for a bit more detail on the finances.
And just for awareness, we probably have about maybe 3 to 5 minutes left, and then I want a little time for discussion before we move on.
We are collaborating with the U of M Foundation and the CentraCare Foundation to create a collaborative funding mechanism. We have established a $50 million goal in the next 18 months, and we are well on the way. I have been pleasantly surprised by the amount of community and corporate interest in that $50 million philanthropic campaign. Additionally, CentraCare is committing operating funds from our operating budget. The notion of this joint venture, I think, is a remarkably different and exciting opportunity for us to change the way healthcare is delivered and financed. We are also working with state and federal funds to create other opportunities to support rural education and support it in a new and innovative way. The thing that I would like to perhaps say is that as leaders, we live in 3 worlds: yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Yesterday means that we live in the legacy and we support the legacy of a land-grant institution. And for example, the Benedictine sisters that started the hospital in St. Cloud, or community members in Wilmer that started that hospital. Yesterday is important. And yesterday's leaders planted seeds that we bear fruit to. Today we live in managing all sorts of complex issues: finances, COVID, competition, collaboration. That is part and parcel. But as leaders, we need to continue to plant seeds for tomorrow, because that's what the future generations are counting on. And I always like to finish conversations like this with 2 points. If not us, then who? And if not now, when?
With that, thank you for your time today, your consideration of this partnership and advancement of our mission, and we will be delighted to answer your questions and seek your guidance in advance of your potential vote in October. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to Regent Vergale.
Thank you, Chair Wheeler, and thank you both, Dr. Holman and Vice President Tolar. I know this has been a lot of work, and the two of you have been in front of us a couple of times, but I know that there are huge teams behind both of you that are doing a lot of the work to make this happen. and really appreciate the opportunity to look through the written agreement. We talked about this when you were before us last time, that this, pen hits the paper, and this is really where it comes together and the commitments on both sides. I just want to express my appreciation to CentraCare for being a true partner in this effort. It's one thing to go out and say we want to do this and we want to provide additional opportunities, not only for academic medicine and learning, but in a unique environment, in a rural environment, which has been very successful at the Duluth campus and has the opportunity to be successful on the St. Cloud campus, in the St. Cloud area and on the St. Cloud campus of the Minsky system. And to see in writing, and as you presented, that the university will be bringing the academic side, the expertise in education, the roots of funding and the financials and working in collaboration with CentraCare, but that CentraCare is making the commitment to make the difference where there is any sort of deficiency or shortfall is really important. It's one of the questions I've certainly heard of, okay, what is this going to cost the university? And I think instead that conversation is, what opportunities is this going to give to people? This is a life-changing opportunity. Dr. Holman, you talked about the other areas that are all supported by this, how important healthcare is to the state of Minnesota on a big picture as far as well-being, but also from a sense of community standpoint. And I'm really excited to see this, to see such thoughtfulness put into a partnership like this for an expansion that can not only, to your point about not having new medical school seats since the 70s, but bringing about that opportunity, as well as really infusing a new generation with the importance of greater Minnesota rural medicine. Being someone who sits in greater Minnesota, I really appreciate that. So thank you.
I remember very vividly when you had just become a regent, and you probably thought, who's this guy that had this weird idea? But we had a conversation. I don't know if you remember it.
Yes.
And that was probably 4 years ago, maybe. And when you have good partnerships and a shared vision, good things happen.
I'm going to turn to two other regents. Regent Turner first.
Dr. Toller, Dr. Holman, I would like to express my appreciation also as a nurse labor leader, and I have traveled the state for over a decade. And I have been an eyewitness to the decimation of healthcare access, especially in obstetrics. Across, one community after another, when you mentioned the decimation of the economic decimation that has gone on, I've been an eyewitness to this. And it seemed hopeless until today. This is very emotional for me because you, and this is my first agreement, you have presented a plan to reverse that trend. And I thank you.
Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Toller, Dr. Holman, I want to echo my fellow regents' gratitude for everything you accomplished. I think this is what true leadership looks like. I mean, you don't have to do this, you didn't have to do this, you didn't have to have this vision, but you did. And since I've been growing up in north central Minnesota, we've had a shortage of doctors forever. And this is really the first time since I've existed that somebody's really gone in there and tried to solve this problem. And so I really appreciate it. And I don't know what the gap is between supply of doctors and demand for doctors, but this is going to help with that for sure. So, hopefully we can expand that even further in other areas as they need them. So I think this is what Minnesota wants. This is what our legislators want. This is what everybody wants in Minnesota is good health care. So, and you're getting us on that path. So thank you very much.
We have a little tagline. Thank you,
Yeah.
Regent. We have a little tagline that we talk about in our leadership meetings. What about Murdoch? What about Perham? Right? What about the rural communities that we serve? I'm not saying that other areas aren't important, but I also think that we have to keep in front of us. What about Perham? What about Murdoch? What about Redwood Falls? What about Big Lake? Those are the things we have to consider. So thank you.
Well, go ahead, Regent Johnson.
Just very briefly, that echoes what so many people have said, but 51 years ago, the state of Minnesota had an incredible vision to start 2 medical schools in the same year, one in Duluth and one in Rochester. I was in the one in Rochester a little bit after that, but not long. And you know, these have served the state very well. The Duluth school is really fantastic in primary care and rural health and tribal medicine, wonderful things. You have different niches. Mayo has a different, maybe we do take very good care of the rural area of southern Minnesota, but the other 2/3 of the state is not. And so this is an incredible opportunity. I think we have to be visionary, and we've heard the vision, which I think is fantastic, and I strongly support. And I think we do have the financial wherewithal to make this happen. So I also strongly support it. Thank you for all the good work you're doing and for my region colleagues.
I'd like to emphasize one important point. Many people think of outstate Minnesota as just kind of a homogeneous thing, and we are increasingly complex and diverse. The St. Cloud school system is half diverse populations. And so our ability to address, as I said, tomorrow and the needs of our patients and our consumers is extremely important, as well as a notice of a more diverse leadership platform involving all sorts of folks whose voices deserve to be heard.
I mean, I have to close it out because, but I will say, and I'll echo the thank you and gratitude for everybody. This is core to the mission of who we are and who we serve. So I want to thank you both for your vision. And it's not as though there's not headwinds in healthcare. There's big ones. And it's not as though there's not physics problem in funding education and research. There are big ones. And still you step forward with a broad vision that enables the health and well-being of the greater Minnesota and rural healthcare and all that it means to those communities in a substantive way. And we thank you for that. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Chair. To adjourn.
Oh, and I get to zap it again?
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.